Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in rural Morgan County, not too far from Murrayville. Have you ever wondered how maple sap becomes maple syrup? Well, if you look off into the woods behind me, you see those blue sacks that are tagged to those trees? Well, that's a maple grove, sugar maple trees. We're on the property of Barb and Pat Ward here. They've got some 200 maple trees that they tap every winter. And then they'll come around, like we are here in late February to early March, and they'll check these bags, and that's when the sap starts running. And what we're going to learn today is how you collect the sap, filter it, cook it down, and then finally bottle it. So let's go on up the hill. Pat Ward, some years are really good years when these trees are running like crazy, and some years the weather just plays kind of tricks on you, doesn't it?
It does, and I thought I had it all figured out after 8 years, and this year now I think I'm a rookie. I expect these bags to have 3 gallons each of sap in them this morning because we're above freezing. We had a nice warm run last night, and instead I've got maybe a gallon and a half. You know, so you just it's hard
to plan. It's kind of like going fishing and checking your trout line, isn't it? You never know what you're going to find. Huh?
You don't know, and we have a short season, kind of like the fishing season sometimes, and the sap season's pretty short, and every year is different.
Yeah. We're going to show how you tap a tree a little later in this program, but just to bring people where we are here, these trees have been tapped, and you tap them sort of what, mid-February or?
About mid-February, yeah. You want to be above 20 degrees when you tap so you don't split the wood, and then you might not get any run for several days. You don't want to tap too early because the holes can dry out, and then you don't get a run.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a tricky situation to tap them at just the right time and catch the run.
Okay. Now, how do you identify a sugar maple?
Well, the easiest way is by leaf. And the maples we have here in Illinois mostly are the red maples, the sugar maple, and the silver maples. And all of those have sugar in them. But the sugar maple has the highest content, which is about 2.5 to 3%. And like a silver maple, you can get a lot of sap from a silver maple that you can boil the rest of your life to get a little bit of syrup.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, we do it by the leaf. I can tell by the bark and the buds because I've done it long enough. And the other trick that we can tell is a lot of them have a yellow dot on them because I walked around this fall when they were beautiful yellow colors and I painted a little yellow dot on them.
Oh, okay. So you looked at the leaves at that time.
Yes.
Okay, and that's how you, okay.
There you
so a person who doesn't have a trained eye would look at this and, well, how do you know that's a sugar? Well, if the leaves were on, you would know.
You would know, yes.
Okay, so you come around in mid-February or so, depending on the weather, and you tap them, you drive your tap in. We'll show that later on. And then you hang these bags, right?
Yeah, in the old days, you know, they had the pretty little copper pots and hung all through the woods. And that was the first, well, if we go back far enough, the first approach, somehow the Indians tapped sugar maple trees. Even the Potawatomi Indians in Illinois traded in the sugar, actually blocks of sugar. And to boil this all the way down to sugar in our modern materials is tricky enough, so how they did it with a hollowed out log, I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Indians started out first, and they used just a piece of sumac stem hollowed out to stick in the tree. But we have, I'll show you different types of taps that we use, but then this woods was full of gallon milk jugs when we first started out.
That's how I've seen them.
Yes. Yeah. And they'd fill up and we'd say, oh, this one's overflowing, not knowing what we were missing. After we started using these sap holders with bags that'll hold 3 gallons, some days we were missing 2 gallons worth of sap. So this is not as aesthetically pleasing, plastic bags hanging on your trees, but it is much more efficient.
Yeah, keeps it in there. Now, Barb your wife, and Ben, your grandson, are going to show us some of the sap, how you collect it.
Yeah.
And Ben, he likes these big buckets, boy. He's a little kid, but he carries a big bucket.
You want to get some sap?
Let's see how it's collected. Let's just see how they do this. Okay, so that's, yep. Oh, I see. So you really don't have to do no rigmarole. You just pour it out, huh? And it's perfectly clear. It looks like water.
Yep.
It's not sticky.
Nope.
And yeah.
They're dripping today. Okay. They're running a little bit. On a good sap flow day, you just see them drip, 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 drip that fast. But today's a little slow.
Good job, Ben. Good job.
How about some for your little bucket?
Oh yeah, let's get Ben's little bucket. He likes those big buckets.
He does.
I'm going to carry the big bucket.
No, I want to carry the big bucket.
Okay, we'll
And
do it
Pat,
together.
point to us here on the spigot,
I'll carry this
on the
bucket.
tree here. And I think it's probably still dripping, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You can see it's dripping out of there. And that's just the sap. Just looks just like water. Nice and cold.
Yeah.
It has just a little bit of sugar content.
It's just above freezing, and sometimes, like you say, if it's too cold, what'll happen is the sap won't run at all. It'll just freeze up in there, and then you're out of luck.
And another trick is the sap will run during the day, and that night it'll freeze up, and I have a big chunk of ice in the bottom of my bags. And then you have to take the system all the way apart. We replace the bags every year, but see, it's just a metal band in here that we wrap the bag around.
Yeah.
And that slides into the sap holder. And for me, this is a much more modern approach, but it is ancient next to the big producers that have everything wired up with plastic tubing.
Oh, and it goes to a central reservoir,
Yes,
huh?
and they
Oh,
use...
that's not fair.
No.
You don't have to hike these big buckets
No,
around the hills.
you don't build any muscle.
No, that's no fair. I'll tell you what, let's go. Now what you do is you've brought your all-terrain vehicle up here, and you've got like a big, people haul water in. You've got a big water hauling thing, and you filter this stuff first and pour it in there, and then you take it back to where you're going to cook it down, right?
Yep, we haul it back up the hill.
Let's go see that process.
Okay.
Barb, before you pour all of that out, could we get just a little taste of that? Is it healthy?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Whoa.
Got it.
Okay, I'm gonna get there's a couple of gnats in there. I'm gonna get those out of there. There we go. Look at that. Look how clear that is. Look how clear that is. You finished yours already?
Oh, that's good. I'm actually 108. That's so good.
Can I take some of this home with me?
It's excellent.
You know what? It tastes like regular water with just a little bit of sweetener in it. It
Just a
doesn't
little
really have
touch.
any maple taste that I can tell.
And no, not yet. And it pulls up all the minerals and from the soil. So it's got tons of minerals. They've done some studies. It's really good for you.
It tastes great.
And it's cold.
We'd better help her with this filter, huh? Okay, she's got a big old bucket.
Got her. Okay.
Wow, you have to be strong to do that too. That's a 5-gallon bucket. It weighs 40 pounds.
She figured out one time that for a gallon of syrup, we have to carry 320 pounds of sap down this hill.
Well, okay, it's overflowing.
She's always figuring these
Look
things
at
out.
that.
She probably wants a raise.
Okay, Pat, now this is back in February when you start drilling your holes in these and let the sap come up. That's all you have to do is a little hole like that?
That's it. We go in about 2 inches, and there's sap starting to come already on this
I'll
one.
be darned. Well, let's not waste any.
Hey.
What do you do next?
Then you put in a tap, and these are 5/16 inch taps. So we have a very small hole, so it heals over easily. Some trees have been tapped for over 100 years, and they're still nice, healthy trees. And we tap it in a little bit.
Well, I think even I could do this.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah, okay, and then you got your blue bag, and we saw these hanging from the trees.
Yep. And then it's ready to start drip, drip, drip. Now, we like a tree about 11 inches before we tap it the first time. A lot of people go smaller than that, but we like a little bigger tree. And if a tree's much larger, we can put 2 taps on it, or even 3. And some people put even more taps, but we're taking some of its energy away, so we don't like to take too much away from the tree, so that we'll be tapping these in 100 years.
So you make a small tap, and then at the end of the season, you take the tap out, and you want it to heal over.
Yes.
And when you tap it the next time, you tap it at a different place.
We had to move 2 inches away from an existing spot. And we don't put anything in the hole because we want it to seal up with the natural bark of the tree. So we just pull the taps out, and they quit running real quickly because then the air can get in there and it dries it up. So they quit losing sap, and then the bark covers it. And sometimes after 2 or 3 years, it's real hard to tell where we tapped before.
Okay. Well, let's proceed and get some of this sap back to the house.
Back to the burners.
Yep.
Okay, guys, we're heading up the house.
Barb, this would be my favorite part. Is this your favorite part?
It is, especially on a sunny day.
Well, you come out here, actually it's kind of nice today because it's chilly.
Yeah, and you can
And it feels so good to stand here in the steam as you cook off.
Yes. The other
the
day,
water
though,
off
we
the
were
syrup.
out here and it was sunny. We brought a drink out, brought a book out, and just read while this just boiled away on its
It
own.
smells so good too. You know, it doesn't knock you out. It doesn't have a strong smell, but it just has a real earthy smell. It smells
It's a
delightful.
good way to get into spring.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay, so when we left the woods, we had poured all of these buckets of sap into the container, which is over here. And then what we did is we transferred from that container, and we saw us drinking some of that out of styrofoam
Right.
cups, into here, right?
Right.
And what is this? What is this for?
This is a pre-warmer, or actually just a warmer. We take the sap directly from the golf cart and put it in here while this sap is cooking. So that as that heat rises, it starts taking this down in temperature a little bit, so that it's not quite so cold.
So if you poured cold sap in there, it would stop boiling. You couldn't
It
keep
breaks
it
the
boiling.
boil.
Gotcha. Okay.
Exactly, and then it takes even more wood and longer to bring it back up to a boil. So we want to we can regulate it right here, and we let it just kind of slowly drip in, and so it still maintains a boil, but we're adding a little bit at a time.
And it kind of stays at this level because it's evaporating as it
Yes.
goes, right? So you're
Yes.
dripping it in, and it's just kind of evaporating out.
And you just have to watch to make sure that it doesn't get too low because you don't want to scorch anything, and you don't want it too high. So it's kind of a guessing
But that's
game.
the right looking boil. Right there is
Right
the right
there is
boil.
a good boil.
Okay. And what about the foam on top?
That's some of the residue, some of the minerals and everything that's in the water portion of it. And so we don't necessarily want to keep that. So we just take an old strainer and just skim that off.
Gee, this is really hard work, isn't it?
It is. It's strenuous.
Is that about the right color?
It's going to get darker than that.
Uh-huh.
This is fairly fresh. It's only been cooking for a couple hours this morning. It'll usually cook for 5 or 6 hours, and it gets a little bit darker.
5 or 6 hours. And how do you know when it's time to move it inside? You taste it?
You can kind of see when the boil starts changing a little bit, or it starts getting dark, or you get tired, or so we don't know the science of it yet.
Yeah.
We haven't got an
You
exact.
just know. You just
we
know.
just are figuring it out because you can keep adding fresh to it. So we could boil it probably for 24 hours if we wanted to.
But what if it went dry?
Well,
Man,
then
that'd be a bad news,
we'd be
wouldn't
in
it?
big trouble.
If you like went in the house and fell asleep and
Oh my gosh.
well,
it would be.
it'd be all stuck,
well,
wouldn't it?
If you take sugar and you cook it down long enough, you get carbon.
Ick.
Yes, and that's not fun.
Yeah,
And
okay.
nobody wants to eat.
Nobody
you know
wants-
those marshmallows that the kids eat that
Yeah.
are all carbonized?
Yeah. No good.
Not good.
Yeah,
Not
okay.
good.
All right.
Not good.
Okay, so this can be a daily affair if you're collecting every day. You come out here and you boil it down every day.
Yes.
And once it gets to a nice tannish, dark tannish color, it's done, and you take it in the house.
We take it in the house.
Okay,
Yep.
terrific.
And we have a little draw off here that allows us to draw it off, and we filter it again just to make sure that we try to keep the sap as clean as possible, but we can draw it off right here, and then we carry it into the house where I finish it off.
Okay. Well, let's go see that process, okay?
Absolutely.
Let's do that. Well, Barb, it just takes some good old-fashioned cooking sometime, doesn't it? You got to get in the kitchen.
You do, and it's a little cliche, but this is my place, is in the kitchen.
All right.
Finishing it off.
And this is similar. What we're seeing boil now is what we just brought in from outside, right?
That's right. I just got it reboiling in here.
And
and
how
it's-
long will this process take?
I boil it here for about 2 hours, probably.
Really? And you
Yes.
kind of have to watch it too,
Oh,
don't you?
yeah.
Because if it overboiled or same thing, right? It would burn.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have to
Yes.
stir it?
No, actually I don't. Every once in a while I watch to make sure that there's nothing that I have to skim off the top. But this has actually been pretty clean this year, so I haven't had to really worry about that.
Okay, and how do you know when it's right to move it along in the process? How do you know when that's the right?
Because the boil starts changing, the bubbles start changing.
Yeah.
If you look at this pot over here,
This one here in front of it? Okay.
the bubbles are considerably different. They're just little fine white bubbles.
Yeah, they don't look like they're rolling quite like they did in the
so
other one.
This is really close, if not syrup.
Okay, and this has taken hours and hours and hours of boiling, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
It
okay.
has. Yeah.
And so you kind of you don't have to stir it. You just watch it and
Every
make sure it
once in a
doesn't
while,
burn.
just because I'm bored, I probably come along and stir, but it's not really necessary.
It's down to, I mean, it's really cooked away. There's not
has.
much left.
No,
so
it's got to go from 40 to 1.
It takes a tremendous amount of sap, 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of
1
syrup,
gallon
right?
of syrup.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so when you see these tiny little bubbles over on our right here, then you know that this is just about where we are, and then you move it along again, right?
Yes.
And it goes
Now
to the
it's
next...
time to test it
Okay.
and see if it is in fact the right consistency to be considered syrup.
And how do we do that?
Okay. Well, the first thing I have to do, I have a tube here that's all metal, and I have a hydrometer. And the scale on here is called the Baume or Baum scale, B-A-U-M-E with an apostrophe on it. And when it's cold, it's syrup at this line. But we're dealing with an extremely hot liquid, so when it gets to this mark here, which is 32, then that means it's syrup.
Okay, and that's on the Baume scale. 32 doesn't really mean anything to us Fahrenheit or centigrade.
No.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dip out some of this out of the pan where it's
very,
boiling.
very hot, boiling hot. Okay.
And I'm going to almost fill this tube. I have to take in consideration that the hydrometer is going to actually force some of it back out over the top.
Okay.
So I leave about 1 inch there.
Okay. And this will tell us whether it's syrup or not. When it okay, you float it in there.
And actually, that's real good syrup.
Okay, and you know that why?
Because that red line is, it's floating, it's gone below that red line. If that red line were right at the surface, then that's the very beginning of, I can bottle it at that point. So since it's below that, it's definitely syrup.
Okay, so it's a little more
thicker.
Little thicker. Gotcha.
We're not doing light syrup here.
Okay.
Okay, so
Terrific.
I take this
okay,
out.
so you're ready.
Put this back in the pan. And then I'm going to excuse myself, but I'm going to have to come over where you're at.
All right. Okay. And then, do I have to hold that for you, or will that filter?
No, I think it'll be just fine. This has got 2 filters in it. The first one is a pre-filter made out of paper.
You don't give a bug a chance, do you? You've caught every bug in the process
here. Anything a chance. And I'm going to turn that heat off too. So we've got a pre-filter that's paper, and then this one is very thick Orlon.
Okay.
And that's the final filter. All right, so that's going to be dripping through there.
So you dispose of this, but you keep
You can actually reuse both of them.
Really?
I can rinse them out.
Okay.
At the end of the season, I'll definitely throw the paper ones away, but these can last a season or two. Now, right down here,
that was just one last opportunity to filter that. That's all that was putting it in that stainless steel. Oh, goodness. Look at that.
and there's your syrup.
Hold that up for us. Yeah, so we can get a good look at it. It is absolutely pure. There's nothing in, nothing floating, no grains, nothing. Just
nothing. Nothing.
Can it? Is that real hot?
You can hold it.
Okay. If I put my finger in it, would it?
Go ahead.
Oh no, it's not too hot.
It's good stuff, isn't it?
It's. I want to chug it. Here,
I'm not sure that it's good for your sugar count, but other than that. Now let me draw another one off.
Okay. Here, let me tip it for you.
Oh, thank you. That has more to do with my counter than anything else.
Okay.
Okay. And then we just take a cap, slide that on there, make sure it's nice and tight. And then I lay them on their sides to cool. That hot liquid up against the top of that cap helps make sure that that's completely clean, sterilized, and ready to go.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I leave them that way until they cool, and then I can put labels on them.
Okay, and this is the labeled product right here. And you can see this is a little different color than what we just saw. And I want to show the back too, because this is where you put your brand on it. You've got the nutrition facts, and this is peeled off, but it says Happy Hollow, 100% pure maple syrup, bottled in 2015. You can put the vintage on there for us. Terrific.
Yes.
But you can see that there's a difference here between what you get early in the season and what you get late in the season.
And
What's
this
the
is
difference?
actually from late last year. And this is what they call frog syrup. And that's because that's when the frogs start chirping in the spring. And that's
Okay.
about time that the old timers knew it was time to stop the sap flow. Or stop collecting the sap, because
Unless
this
you
becomes
really
very
like it.
strong.
Okay.
It's got almost a molasses flavor to it.
Okay.
So first run is really light, and then this is just a shade darker. This is what we did today.
Oh, so it's still light. It's still a light syrup today. Yeah.
But it's just a shade darker than the other one was. So as the season goes on, it can get a little bit darker.
And one other thing I want you to tell us about. You described this to me as maple sand. Where did this come in the process?
Okay, when I dumped that hot maple syrup into the filter, by tonight, when all of that has filtered out and whatever else I add to it, this is what's left in the filter. And this is any impurities. And if you take this, you can feel it's actually sandy.
Yeah, it's gritty. It's gritty.
That's some of the minerals and everything else
But it
that
tastes
have been.
good though, doesn't it?
It's got a little bit of a gritty flavor to it, but it's not bad.
It's healthy, isn't it?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Tastes fine to me.
There you go, there you go. And so this is what it actually looks like
Oh, in the filter, huh?
in the filter itself.
This is what's left behind after the very last filtering.
Yes.
Okay, I said one last thing, but I mean two
Okay.
last things. This is also a byproduct if you choose it to be, right?
Yes, you can take maple syrup and you can boil it even further. I think it's about 30 degrees further past the point that it's syrup. And it gets really, really thick and really dark. And then you start stirring it. And you stir and stir and stir, and it gets glossy and it gets thick. And you keep stirring, and all of a sudden there's a little poof of steam, and it turns this light brown color, and it's sugar.
Do you ever cook with it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really good. You can use it instead of regular granulated sugar, or you can use it instead of brown sugar.
Instead of brown sugar. It looks like brown sugar.
Yeah. So chocolate chip cookies made with maple sugar have a little hint of maple flavor to them. They're really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Wow. Very interesting. Well,
This
thank
is
you
an
for-
old-time product, actually.
Yeah.
The pioneers and everybody, they used a lot of maple sugar. They didn't know anything about, the white granulated sugar.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to do that.
Well, thanks for walking us through the process and
Yeah.
letting us in your kitchen.
No problem. No problem. It's always a pleasure.
Eventually, the Wards hope to produce 50 gallons of maple syrup each year. That's 2,000 gallons of sap. And they want to do it in the maple house they're going to build with these logs that they got from their own property. With another Illinois story in Morgan County, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send $19.95 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.